When the F4 tornado hit, teachers ran in panic, the principal forgot the emergency protocol, and parents screamed helplessly. But the person who saved the lives of 200 children at the school wasn't any of them. It was 67-year-old janitor Jim, the same man they had mocked that morning in the teacher's lounge, calling him Half-Wit and saying he could only clean, until the children came face to face with death. Welcome to Vietnam Stories. Before we begin this powerful tornado rescue and respect story, could you tell us in the comments which city you're watching this video from? And if you believe stories like this need to be heard, please hit that subscribe button and help us keep these voices alive. Moore Elementary School was like the heart of a small town in Oklahoma, a 450-student, two-story brick building that had stood since 1963. Every morning at 7:30, its doors would open and children's laughter would fill the corridors. The teachers were experienced, Principal Robert Hayes was respected, and parents trusted the school. But there was another invisible part of this system, James Jim Crawford. 67 years old, he had been the school's janitor for 30 years. He would arrive every morning at 6 and stay until 7 at night. He cleaned classrooms, changed light bulbs, and maintained the heating system. The children loved him and called him Uncle Jim. But to the adults, he was just the janitor. They would make jokes about him in the teacher's lounge. Don't ask Jim, he only knows cleaning. What could he possibly understand about emergencies? He's been here 30 years, but he's still half-wit. When Jim heard these things, he would just nod his head and continue with his work. He never argued back, never defended himself. That May morning was the same. While teachers were drinking coffee in their lounge, young teacher Sarah Jenkins was complaining. "Yesterday I asked Jim to fix the curtain at the window. He said, 'That's not my job.' Like it was such a difficult thing." Principal Hayes laughed. "Sarah, Jim is a good man, but don't get your expectations too high. He's only good with mops and brooms." Veteran teacher Margaret Wilson agreed. "He's not much use during emergency drills either. He just stands in the hallway, counts children. We do the real organizing." Jim entered the room at that exact moment, carrying his coffee thermos. Silence fell. "Sorry," he said quietly. "I just wanted to fill this with water." He filled his thermos, bowed his head, and left. Sarah felt a bit uncomfortable. "Did he hear us?" "You should get used to Jim," said Hayes. "Quiet, docile, doesn't cause problems, just good at cleaning." None of them knew Jim's real past. None had asked. None had been curious. They only saw an old, harmless janitor. But deep in Jim's closet at home, hidden documents in an old box told a different story. 1970 to 1972. Vietnam. 25th Infantry Division. Tunnel rat specialist. Combat engineer. Silver Star, Bronze Star, Purple Heart, underground labyrinth systems expert. He had spent 2 years in the Cu Chi tunnels. He was an expert at surviving in dark, narrow, oxygen-less places. But Jim had never told anyone. When he returned from war, nobody wanted to hear about it. Protest era, opposing views, baby killer slurs. He had learned silence. Just find work, don't talk too much. That morning, weather warnings had begun. Severe thunderstorm warning, tornado watch in effect. But it was considered normal for May in Oklahoma. School opened at regular hours. At 2:15, the sky darkened. Wind intensified. The meteorology service upgraded the warning, tornado warning. Take immediate shelter. Principal Hayes' voice echoed through the school speakers. "Emergency. All students and staff immediately go down to the shelter. This is not a drill." Panic began. 450 children poured into the corridors at once. Teachers started shouting, "Stay calm, get in line." But the children were scared. Pushing began. Jim was fixing sinks in the girls' bathroom on the second floor at that moment. When he heard the announcement, he dropped his tools and stepped into the corridor. The scene was chaos. Small children were crying, teachers were shouting helplessly. Jim quietly sprang into action. He saw first-grade children and gathered them around him. "Follow me. Don't run." With a calm voice and steady steps, he directed them to the shelter. The shelter was in the school's basement. Concrete walls, steel doors, capacity for 500 people. But now 450 children and 30 adults were starting to crowd in. Space shortage, breathing difficulty, panic. Outside, tornado sounds were coming. Howling, creaking, glass breaking sounds. The F4 tornado was heading toward the school. Principal Hayes was trying to call the fire department on the radio. Moore Elementary, 450 children in shelter, tornado passing directly over us. Copy Moore Elementary, all units on hold until tornado passes, wait 15-20 minutes. 15 to 20 minutes. Under normal circumstances, nothing. But in the shelter with so many children with panic, very long. Then the electricity went out. Only small bulbs were on in the emergency generator. Semi-darkness, children became more afraid. Crying increased. Sarah Jenkins, the young teacher, started to become hysterical. I can't breathe. It's too hot. Is the oxygen running out? Margaret Wilson tried to calm her. Calm down, Sarah. The ventilation system is working. But the air was really getting bad. 480 people in the same place, insufficient airflow. Carbon dioxide levels rising, oxygen decreasing. At that moment, a terrible sound came. Creaking, cracking, then a big noise. The tornado was passing over the school, roof pieces flying, windows exploding. But the real problem was elsewhere. The shelter's ventilation ducts came from the ceiling. Due to the tornado's impact, the ceiling structure collapsed, blocking the ventilation opening. Airflow stopped. Nobody noticed for the first 5 minutes. Then it slowly began to be felt. The air became heavy. Children started crying more. Adults began to feel uncomfortable. Margaret Wilson noticed, "There's no airflow. Ventilation isn't working." Principal Hayes looked up. The ventilation opening was under debris. "My God, we can't get air." Panic rose. 480 people in the same closed space. Oxygen running out. Children could start fainting. Sarah Jenkins screamed, "We have to get out of here. We're going to suffocate." Hayes tried the radio again. "Emergency. Ventilation system collapsed. We're having oxygen problems." "Copy Moore Elementary. Nearest unit is 10 minutes away. Hold on." 10 minutes. At that moment, children were starting to hold their heads. As oxygen decreased, carbon dioxide poisoning was beginning. It could even be fatal. Teachers panicked. "What are we going to do? Someone has to do something." Margaret Wilson shouted, "Is there an alternative exit? Another air route?" Hayes was confused. "I don't know. Our plans only have the main ventilation." At that moment, Jim stood up from the corner of the shelter. For 30 years, he had watched quietly, never given advice. But now, children were in mortal danger. "Principal," he said in a calm voice, "Jim, this isn't the time. We're facing an emergency." "I know, sir, but the problem can be solved." Sarah got angry. "What do you understand about this? You only do cleaning." Jim ignored her, looked at the principal. "There's an old ventilation duct. When the building was constructed in 1963, the original system was different. It was later renovated, but the old duct is still there." Hayes looked skeptically. "How do you know that?" "I've been here 30 years, sir. I know every inch of this building." Margaret Wilson intervened. "Well, where is the old duct? Is it open?" "In the basement storage back section, closed with a metal cover, but it can be opened. Just what?" asked Hayes. Jim hesitated. "It's very narrow, about 2 feet in diameter. An adult can't fit, but it could provide airflow." Sarah got angry. "Airflow won't be enough. We're 480 people. We need a professional solution." Hayes tried the radio again. "Fire department, is there alternative ventilation? Emergency oxygen unit?" "Negative, Moore Elementary. Our equipment can't reach due to tornado. Solve with your own means." At that moment, children started fainting. First a 6-year-old girl, then other children. Oxygen level was at critical level. Margaret Wilson shouted in panic, Now children are fainting. We have to do something immediately. Jim spoke again. Principal, I can open the old duct, but to reach there you have to pass through narrow places and what? Electricity is out. In darkness, only with flashlights, it will be difficult. Hayes was desperate. Children were dying. There was no alternative. Okay, Jim. Do it. Do whatever it takes. Jim took out a powerful flashlight from his bag. For 30 years he had been prepared for all kinds of repairs in this school. He walked toward the back of the shelter. Sarah mocked. What can this old man do? We handled the tough jobs. You wait here, said Jim. Take care of the children. There was a small door in the back wall. Storage entrance. Jim opened the door, went inside. Dark, smelly, narrow space. Old school supplies, broken chairs, forgotten items. He turned on the flashlight, scanned the back wall. Yes, there it was. Metal cover, 2 feet in diameter, hadn't been opened since 1963, covered with rust and dirt. Jim took out heavy pliers from his bag. Started turning the cover. 60-year-old rust was very hard resistant. But Jim didn't give up. He had worked in worse conditions in Vietnam. 10 minutes later, the cover opened. Stale air came from inside, but air came. The tunnel was 4 feet deep, then went upward. It reached the outer wall, opened outside. But the problem was, the tunnel was only 2 feet in diameter. A normal person couldn't fit, only someone very thin or... Jim stopped. Vietnam memories came. Cu Chi tunnels, 18-inch diameter tunnels, Viet Cong's secret passages. Only the smallest soldiers could enter there. Tunnel rats. And Jim, between 1970-72, had lived in those tunnels for 2 years. Now he was 67 years old, but still small built. 5 feet 6 inches, 140 pounds. Not like back then, but maybe. Jim looked at the mouth of the tunnel. Inside was completely dark. Hadn't been opened for 60 years. What was inside was unclear. Spiders, mice, or worse. But outside, 200 children were suffocating. He put the flashlight in his mouth, entered the tunnel. The first 10 feet were easy. A bit wider, he could advance by pulling his knees. But then it narrowed, dropped to 18 inches diameter. Just like Cu Chi tunnels. Jim stopped. Vietnam flashbacks started coming. Dark tunnels, booby traps, enemy sounds, feeling of not being able to breathe. PTSD triggering. But then he heard children's voices from behind. Crying, coughing, fainting children. Jim took a deep breath. I'm a tunnel rat. This is my job. He continued advancing in the tunnel. Pulling his knees, holding the flashlight forward, rust smell, humidity, 60 years of dust, breathing getting difficult but continuing. 50 feet later, the tunnel started going upward. Jim was advancing like climbing uphill, crawling with his hands, knees, just like Vietnam times. Then he saw a metal grate in the wall. He had reached the outer wall. Outside air would come from here. But the grate hadn't been opened for 60 years, was very tightly seated. Jim tried to turn the grate with the small screwdriver in his hand. The first screw was very hard, wouldn't come out. The second screw was a bit easier. At the fourth screw, the screwdriver broke. Desperation. Children were dying. He was stuck here. Jim got angry. He had done harder things in Vietnam. He hit the grate with his fist. Once, twice, on the third the old metal broke. Outside air started coming in, clean oxygen. Jim took a deep breath, then shouted, "Air is coming." The return was faster. He knew the tunnel now, where to turn, where to be careful. He returned to the shelter in 15 minutes. When he came out, everyone looked at him. His clothes dirty, face covered in filth, hands bloody. But clean airflow was coming from behind him. Margaret Wilson asked in astonishment, "Jim, how did you do it?" I opened the old ventilation duct. Airflow started. Hayes couldn't believe it. "But that tunnel is very narrow. How did you fit?" Jim stopped. He had to reveal a truth he hadn't told anyone for 50 years. "I was a tunnel rat in Vietnam," he said quietly. "I was a specialist in working in narrow places." Silence. None of them knew this. Sarah asked in astonishment. What does tunnel rat mean? Underground tunnels, reconnaissance behind enemy lines, narrow, dark, dangerous places for 2 years. Margaret Wilson was ashamed. That morning she had said, what could he possibly understand about emergencies? Hayes tried to hide his shame. Jim, thank you. You became a hero. Jim just nodded. The children were important, nothing else. 20 minutes later, the fire department arrived. Children were safe, oxygen level had returned to normal. The air duct that Jim opened had saved them all. The firefighter asked, who opened this old ventilation duct? This is professional work. Hayes looked at Jim. Our janitor opened it. He has military background. The firefighter was surprised. A janitor? Only an expert could do this job. Very dangerous, very narrow space. Jim remained silent again. He didn't want applause, didn't want to be a hero. He had just done his job. The next day, the local newspaper headlined, School Janitor Saves 450 Children in Tornado. But what really changed was the atmosphere at school. Sarah Jenkins found Jim. Jim, I'm sorry for what I said that morning. No problem, said Jim. It's over. No, it is a problem. We never tried to get to know you. We only saw you as a janitor. Margaret Wilson also came. Jim, can we learn about your military record? We want to hear your story. Jim hesitated. He hadn't told anyone for 50 years. Vietnam was hard, said Jim quietly. We experienced a lot. Then we came home, tried to build normal lives. But you're a hero. Why did you never mention it? Asked Margaret. Because it stayed in the past. What matters is what we can do now, replied Jim. From that day on, everything at school changed. Emergency plans were revised. Jim's knowledge was included. Building plans, alternative exits, emergency equipment. Jim's advice was taken on everything. Teachers started talking to him differently. They started saying Jim instead of Uncle Jim, with respect as equals. Children already loved him, but now parents did too. Uncle Jim saved our children, they would say. Principal Hayes called Jim to his office. Jim, I have a proposal for you. Sir, Jim asked, I want to change your janitor title, facilities manager, with a salary increase. Jim thought, title doesn't matter, sir. The job stays the same. No, Jim, the job isn't the same anymore. You're not just doing cleaning. You're this school's security expert. 3 months later, a new emergency system was installed at Moore Elementary. Multiple ventilation ducts, backup generators, professional communication system. But most importantly, Jim was now head of the emergency team. In monthly trainings, teacher meetings, parent conferences, his voice was listened to. A year later, an inspector came from the state education department. He was going to check emergency preparedness. Who designed your emergency protocols? He asked the principal. Hayes answered proudly. Our facilities manager, Jim Crawford, Vietnam veteran, tunnel rat specialist. The inspector was surprised. Tunnel rat? Those guys are legends. Very few are still alive. Jim wasn't at that meeting. He was in the basement checking the new ventilation system. He hadn't changed at all. Still quiet, still humble. But now the school knew him. Not just as a janitor, but as their protector. 5 years have passed since that tornado. Jim turned 72 but is still working. He doesn't want to retire. These children are my family, he says. Keeping them safe is my job. When new teachers come, experienced ones tell them Jim's story. Don't underestimate him. He's our hero. And every tornado season, Jim makes his preparations. Checking emergency kits, testing escape routes, checking ventilation systems. Because he knows, when the next tornado comes, the lives of 450 children might be in his hands again. And this time, no one will underestimate him. Jim Crawford was seen as just a janitor. For 30 years, he was mocked, looked down upon, ignored. But when the F4 tornado came and the lives of 450 children were in danger, that quiet man showed his true identity. Tunnel rat, Vietnam veteran, life-saving expert. That day everyone learned, The person who seems smallest is sometimes the greatest hero. Now, my question to you. Have you ever met someone like Jim? Someone who was looked down upon but stepped up in critical moments? Share their names in the comments. Tell their stories. Because at Vietnam Stories, we believe that real strength is hidden in silence. If this video moved you, subscribe, share, and help us keep these voices alive. See you in the next one. And always remember, if you see a janitor working quietly at school, look carefully, because you might be passing by a hero.